There's a particular kind of ache that doesn't come from losing someone suddenly. It comes from being gently, repeatedly kept away from them. No slammed doors, no explosive endings, no shouting, no final scene with rain and dramatic music. Just distance. A quiet, invisible force that grows. No matter how many times you try to shrink it, chase it, or close the gap. You replay conversations in your mind like a scratched vinyl record, wondering where the glitch began. You analyze pauses, tone shifts, unspoken emotions, searching for a reason the connection faded, even when it felt alive. You ask yourself, what did I miss? What did I say wrong? Why did love feel so real, yet not stay? And slowly, silently, you start convincing yourself that maybe, if you were more patient, more understanding, more willing to bend, dissolve, adjust, apologize for needs you never should have apologized for, maybe things would have ended differently. But here's the truth your heart keeps whispering, even when your mind argues. The universe does not block people from your life casually, and it does not do it to punish you. When the universe refuses to let someone stay, it is not because you were lacking. It is not because the love was fake. It is not because you were too much or not enough. It is because keeping them would have required you to become less than who you are meant to be. You felt the pull, the chemistry, the electricity, the importance of it all. And that is exactly why it hurt so deeply when it slipped away. Because it wasn't imaginary, it was real. But real does not always mean aligned. Connection does not always mean destiny. Intensity does not always mean intimacy. Sometimes the universe allows you to feel something profoundly, just so you finally understand what profound feels like. And then, once your soul has recognized the depth of that emotion, it removes the person who cannot meet you there. Before you shrink yourself trying to drag them into your evolution, you were not losing them. You were being protected from abandoning yourself. Look back closely, not with self-blame, but with honesty. The moments you tried explaining your needs and felt like you were asking for too much. The times you swallowed your voice to avoid conflict. The nights you rewrote your own boundaries in your head to make room for them. The way you went quiet to keep peace that should have never been your responsibility alone. That was not love stretching you upward. That was love charging you rent for existing. And the universe saw the invoice long before you admitted you were paying it. Growth is not always gentle. Elevation does not always begin with peace. High consciousness does not knock softly. It shakes you awake through contrast, through confusion, through longing, through unanswered questions, through the slow, dull ache of realizing, I wanted this, but this cannot take me where I am going. The universe does not remove people because they are evil. It removes them because the next version of you cannot breathe in the same emotional climate. Not every connection is a bridge. Some are benchmarks, a measurement of your capacity, a reminder of what you are ready for. Even when the other person is not, you are ready to love deeply. You were ready to show up without armor. You were ready to build, not just burn. But not everyone you meet is prepared to stand in that same emotional terrain. And instead of letting you keep pouring into a cup with a hole at the bottom, the universe tipped the table. Not violently, not cruelly, just firmly, inevitably. And that is why the ending felt subtle at first. Confusing, unfinished, unlabeled. Because the universe does not snatch away what your soul is still extracting wisdom from. It waits. It waits until the lesson is absorbed, digested, completed. Only then does it create the distance that feels like loss, even when it is liberation in disguise. This is where surrender begins. Not the kind that collapses, not the kind that gives up, not the kind that says, I quit, but the kind that says, I stop negotiating with what drains me. I stop rewriting myself into someone's comfort zone. I stop begging doors that were never meant to open wider. The moment you stop asking, why couldn't I have them? And instead ask, who am I becoming because I couldn't? That is the moment the gears shift. The universe does not just take away, it makes space. space for peace that does not require translation, space for love that does not feel like tension, space for connections that do not poke your wounds just to keep your attention, space for bonds that stay without demanding you disappear in the process. Blocked blessings are not rejection, they are course correction. You are not losing something right now. You are being rescued from repetition, from the exhausting cycle of reliving the same emotional lesson with different faces, different voices, and different costumes, but the same plot. You are being spared from repeating a pattern that once felt like home, simply because it was familiar, from confusing chaos with closeness, from mistaking intensity for intimacy, from believing that volatility meant passion or that inconsistency meant mystery, from assigning meaning to what was merely unresolved trauma wearing a new disguise. You are being pulled back from the habit of mistaking familiarity for fate, from thinking that because something felt recognizable, it must be meant for you, from believing that because you had survived something like it before, you were destined to endure it again, from assuming that if the story rhymed, it was yours to finish. You are being unhooked from the illusion that pain was proof of importance, from interpreting anxiety as attachment, from believing that heartbreak was evidence of depth, from assuming that suffering meant you were chosen, from thinking that the people who hurt you the most must have mattered the most. Yes, it hurts. Yes, it shakes you. Yes, there are nights when the silence feels unbearable, and mornings when letting go feels like a kind of self-betrayal. Because part of you still believed, secretly, stubbornly, hopefully, that if you held on just a little longer, something might finally transform. But the universe does not negotiate with what is expired. It does not linger when a soul is already done trying. It does not wait for humans to catch up when the spirit has already packed, paid its emotional bills, and left the house. You are not being abandoned. You are being relocated. Not to emptiness, but to elevation. This is what rising looks like before it feels like peace. Loneliness before alignment. Stillness before clarity. Separation before expansion. Silence before understanding. Detachment before destiny reveals itself. It is the painful gap between what you were and what you are becoming. It is the emotional detox before the spiritual upgrade installs. It is the moment the heart is being emptied, not as punishment, but as preparation. And one day, not far from now, not decades away, not in some distant lifetime, you will look back and realize what felt like rejection was actually redirection. What felt like loss was actually liberation. What felt like loneliness was actually your system rebooting itself back to its original truth. What felt like heartbreak was the precise moment your life stopped begging for crumbs and finally began making room for a seat at a bigger table. You will see clearly that the love you were fighting for would have required you to stay reduced, and your soul does not sign contracts that shrink. It does not stay where it has to pretend. It does not choose people who need you smaller to feel secure. It does not bond with connections that survive only when you disappear inside them. The right connections, when they finally enter your life, will not need convincing. They will not ask you to amputate pieces of yourself to make them comfortable. They will not require you to silence your intuition to keep them unthreatened. They will not ask you to dilute your intelligence to feel less intimidated. They will not mistake your sensitivity for weakness or your boundaries for arrogance. They will feel like relief, like recognition, like love that finally speaks your language fluently, without translation, without struggle, without distortion. They will feel like returning home, not to a place, not to a person, but to a version of love that doesn't make you doubt your own pulse. But until that chapter walks in, take a breath and listen closely. This space you are in is not empty. It is sacred. It is not a void. It is a waiting room with better standards. This is the quiet temple where your nervous system unlearns survival mode, where your heart remembers its own rhythm without needing another person to conduct it, where your intuition grows louder because confusion is no longer hogging the mic, where your identity stops dissolving into someone else's uncertainty, where your soul stops auditioning for roles in stories that were never written for it, The universe is not asking you to stop loving. It is asking you to stop settling. And if this message reached you while you are still grieving someone you couldn't keep, let it land properly this time. Not as heartbreak alone, but as initiation. Because grief is not the evidence that you failed. It is the evidence that you cared deeply in the wrong place and survived long enough to finally see it. So before you scroll past this moment, anchor it with me. Let it matter. Let it land. Let it shift something in you at a cellular level. Declare it boldly, without hesitation, without whispering, without bargaining. I trust the universe to remove what cannot grow with me, because what is meant for you will never demand you become less to hold it. It will never require you to shrink to be loved. It will never ask you to edit yourself into digestible portions. It will never make you compete for belonging. It will never confuse you into thinking that love is something you have to earn through suffering. The universe did not steal from your story. It cleared the stage for a bigger scene to enter. A chapter larger than attachment, larger than confusion, larger than almost love, larger than maybe one day, larger than if only, larger than could have been. A chapter that doesn't suffocate under longing, a chapter that doesn't tremble under inconsistency, a chapter that doesn't fade under uncertainty, a chapter that finally breathes, expands, and arrives without you having to disappear first. Sometimes the universe says no, not because you were unworthy, but because you were overqualified for the old story. And if you know someone struggling to release, someone drowning in the belief that loss equals failure, share this with them. Not to lecture, not to rush their healing, not to drag them into closure, but to remind them gently, sometimes love ends, not because you failed, but because you finally became too awake to be misled by what can't stay. And when the universe closes a connection, it is not silence after, it is resonance preparing, because something truer is already knocking, something honest is already forming, something lasting is already approaching. And this time, it will not ask you to shrink, it will ask you to rise.